The shadow in the Piney Woods. The small town of Pineville, Texas, had always been a place where everyone knew each other, where the scent of barbecue filled the air on Sunday afternoons, and life moved at a leisurely pace. But lately, the town had been gripped by fear, the kind that made people lock their doors at dusk and look over their shoulders in broad daylight. It started with the disappearance of a local girl, Emily Turner. She was last seen leaving the high school football game one Friday night, her bright smile the only light on a dark, starless evening. Her parents waited for her to come home, but she never did. The search parties combed the woods, the streets, every inch of the town, but Emily was gone. A week later, her body was found deep in the Piney Woods, mutilated beyond recognition. The town was horrified, whispers of a monster in their midst spreading like wildfire. The local sheriff, an old man named Harold, who had never seen much more than bar fights and petty theft in his long career, was suddenly faced with something far darker than he could have imagined. And then the killings started. Every week, like clockwork, another body was found. Always in the woods, always young, always brutally murdered. The killer left no clues, no evidence, just a trail of blood and terror. The media dubbed him the Piney Woods Butcher, and his legend grew with each passing day. The town was suffocating under the weight of fear, and every shadow seemed to hide the killer. Curfews were enforced, but it didn't stop the bodies from piling up. Sheriff Harold was at his wits' end, the pressure to catch the butcher mounting with every sleepless night. One evening, a break came. A hiker passing through the area had stumbled upon a cabin deep in the woods, far off the beaten path. It looked abandoned, but something about it felt wrong. The hiker reported it to the sheriff, who immediately gathered his deputies and headed out to investigate. The cabin was a decrepit thing, nearly swallowed by the forest around it. The air was thick with the smell of decay as they approached, guns drawn, hearts pounding. They kicked in the door and were met with a sight that would haunt them forever. Inside, the cabin was a chamber of horrors. The walls were lined with photographs of the victims, their faces marked with red X's. There were crude drawings and symbols scrawled in blood, and in the center of the room, a makeshift altar covered in animal bones. And there, in the corner, sat a man, unkempt, wild-eyed, and grinning like a madman. It was Tim Reeves, a local who had gone missing years before, thought to have been lost to the woods. He was dirty, his clothes ragged, and his hands stained with the blood of his victims. Sheriff Harold approached slowly, the weight of his revolver comforting in his hand. "Tim, why did you do it?" he asked, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and sorrow. Tim looked up at the sheriff, his grin widening. "The woods told me to," he whispered. "They needed the blood, they needed the souls." Harold felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had always dismissed the old stories, the legends of spirits haunting the woods, demanding sacrifices. But now, looking into Tim's crazed eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, there was something out there, something ancient and evil that had claimed Tim Reeves as its own. The sheriff raised his gun, but before he could pull the trigger, Tim lunged at him with a knife that had been hidden beneath his tattered coat. A shot rang out, and Tim crumpled to the floor, a sickening smile still on his lips. The butcher was dead, but the town of Pineville would never be the same. The shadow of the Piney Woods loomed large over them, a constant reminder that some evils are older than men, and some darkness can never be fully extinguished.